Oh, this is Bert, and on this video and blog, I will be showing you the difference between two separate options of saving your pictures. First is, let me click my file, RAW. Second is JPEG. So RAW basically is a large file, uncompressed, untouched. JPEG is a version of the RAW file, compressed version of the raw file. So let me first talk about what does JPEG mean, what does compress mean. JPEG stands for Joint Picture Group Association. It is a standard where uh, the industry sets a common file format, a way of storing data. But the raw file differs from each manufacturer. In this case, I'm using an Olympus Zone DM1 and it outputs a ORF, meaning Olympus RAW file. If it's a Sony, it will be a different RAW file. If it's a Nikon and Canon, it will be a different RAW file. But after their processing, after their compression, they will be using a single standard format, which is JPEG. Even though they're using a standard output compressed file, the compression or the way they process from raw file to a JPEG differs. So in this case, Olympus is very well known on processing their JPEGs very accurately. So they can achieve lower file size, meaning compression, without losing much detail on the uh, image. So even though that's the case, I can still show you what's the difference between a JPEG file and an ORF file. First, let me elaborate on what is the meaning of compressed. So basically, the meaning of compressed is the image data, the information, the color, the amplitude of each color, the brightness, the contrast, each spectrum of the color is being averaged out. What do I mean by average out is if you have many color information, those that have similar information are being averaged out. Let's say you have five different shades of blue. Those shades of blue are being averaged out and saved as a, let's say you have five. Instead of having five, you'll be having two shades of blue. So instead of storing five information, five data points, you'll be storing two data points. At the end, you'll be having less data to store, meaning less file size. That's why you call it compressed. JPEG also means, compressed also means, it is a file format that you output after the in-camera processing. So what does it mean, in-camera processing? In-camera processing involves things like your white balance. If you set your white balance into cloudy, into fluorescent lamp, into sunny, so all that processing will be saved on the JPEG file and not on the RAW file. Another example is the exposure value EV. Some call them exposure bias. So that info will be saved after the JPEG, after the compression. Color tones is also saved at the JPEG. For example, I normally use Vivid in my Olympus camera, so that's being saved. So all the in-camera processing is being applied after the JPEG. So what does RAW mean? RAW means is a untouched data from the subject through the lens to the sensor, then to your data storage. Of course, it goes through those image processors. At the end, it goes to your data storage with minimal modification of the image. So that's about what's the meaning of raw file and JPEG file. So in real life, what by compression, by saving your file in JPEG, how much information you lose. So on this video, I'll be showing you a good example. So take a look on this raw file, particularly on this histogram. You will see that you have your white color, a gray, I think it's gray, spread out in the x-axis and y-axis. X-axis means your midtones, your highlights or your whites, and your shadows or your blacks. And that's the x-axis, and the y-axis is the amplitude. So take a look on this blue spectrum. You will be noticing the blue have a 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 peaks on the raw file. But when it's being compressed, take a look on what happens on this blue spectrum. You will see that the blue spectrum now is having 2 peaks. So this is what I'm trying to tell you earlier, that the 5 shades of blue is actually have similar information between them, and averaging out these shades of blue into 2 shades of blue will enable you to compress the file, say generate a much smaller file size without losing that much information. You will see here the difference between a JPEG on a, I think this is a 50% size of the actual resolution, is pretty much no big difference. The actually the JPEG looks more saturated than the raw file. This is just because of the image processing, the in-camera image processing that I mentioned to you, like the color tones I chose vivid. That's why the JPEG looks more saturated. But do believe me that when I tell you that the raw file contains much more detail, simply by looking at the histogram, you have 5 different shades of blue, but the JPEG has only 2. So that's basically main difference between RAW and JPEG. Initially, I shoot JPEG from time to time. I'm trying to shoot RAW, but I'm a lazy person, so even though I have the RAW file, I end up using the JPEG file. But if you want to push the limits of your image and during post-processing, I would highly recommend you using saving your pictures on RAW, or most cameras now actually come in an option in saving RAW and JPEG at the same time. So basically, I'm doing the same thing. I'm saving RAW and JPEG, and later on, I'll decide which one to keep. But I'm just telling you that I end up using the JPEG anyways because I'm a lazy guy. And Olympus have done a good job on processing the JPEG, so I end up using JPEGs. So please do enjoy the rest of the vlog and the video, and catch you later.